Welcome everyone. Hello friends. Good evening. I hope you are all doing good in this lockdown. We are unlocking gradually. Things are not pretty much good around, but we have to live with this. And today, in our podcast session, in FB Live session, we have a marketing expert, Philip Kotler Award winner, and a poet by heart, Mr. Ajish Venugopalan. So, friends, let's welcome Mr. Ajish on live session, and feel free to send your questions, and we'll try to answer those questions. But I will take the opportunity to ask questions first with Mr. Ajish. Hello, Mr. Ajish. How are you doing?
Very good, Aniket. Thank you so much for having me on the FB Live. How are you?
I'm absolutely fine coping with the lockdown, but now hopefully I'm very much adapted to it. So I'm enjoying the work from home sessions.
Yeah, probably this is the new normal. This is the new way of life. So
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Ajish, how is your work life now with all these situations around, and how are you keeping your writing spree?
I think I think working from home is better. I believe, isn't it? At least I save 3 hours a day in traffic. So I'm pretty much used to sitting on my desk and chair at home. This is cool. I hope I think there's a company called Atlassian who has already announced that they're going to let their employees work from home for life. So they're not going to return to office at all. So probably that's going to be the new stuff. You save a lot of money on infrastructure, operating cost. So I think I'm enjoying it. Just that the workload sometimes is a little high. Given the fact that most of us are working from home, so you're expected to answer a phone call any given point of time. So that's a flip side of things. But I believe things may change, and it is probably changing for the good.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we all are hoping the best, and hopefully the vaccine will be out soon, and we can be out also. But today's topic is not about COVID. Today's topic is all about your book and your journey to become how you have gotten it into as in a published form. So, Ajish, why don't you tell to our viewers that how is your journey in compiling all these poems? And so, just before that, this is a wonderful piece of all the poems I have gone through, and trust me, I have read it like 2 or 3 times just to understand, comprehend couple of poems. So for me it was a tough read also, but it all depends on how readers take those poems. So, Adish, the question for you is, how is your journey, and how you have compiled all these poems together?
Yeah, so Aniket, I never wrote a book deliberately. What I wrote resulted in a book. Then I thought, okay, why not compile it and give it a form and shape of a book? That is what happened. But it's a journey. It's been a journey. As a young adult of maybe 20 years old, to probably an older adult of 40-year-old. So this is probably a journey of the last 20 years of my life. That's the book about. Um, it talks about love. It talks about women. It talks about love as a young adult, you falling in love with a girl. It talks about women understanding a woman deeper. It talks about life in general. What it means to you and how do you try to. I think every human being goes through the same journey of trying to identify the purpose of their own lives. So the book talks about how I was trying to arrive at a purpose of my life, or what it should be, right? You're trying to decipher, why the hell do you exist on this planet? So it talks about that. It talks about social causes. What are the political or geopolitical scenarios that affects or impacts your life. So the book talks about that. And it at the end, death is the utmost reality of life. So if you're born, then you have to go back wherever you've come from. So
Right.
the book also talks about death. So So right from birth to death, I think the different poems that I've written covers almost, it touches upon the various stages of life. That's the way it has been structured.
Absolutely, and even I can totally understand, because when I was going through the book, I found multiple sections in the book, and some of the poems I took time to at least understand that what a poet wants to convey. But what I really like about the book was the different sections. Like, right, section one is dedicated to love, and then you have women life, and some other sections which are dedicated to nature also, and ultimately the real truth of life is death. So how did you really manage to section, or maybe segmentize or categorize all your poems in different sections? I believe a poet is quite raw, so they do not really categorize things before writing. So in a form of a book, how did you manage to do that?
So Aniket, that's ideally, if I were a famous author, the publisher would have done that for me, or the editor would have done that for me. But since we are beginners, we are debutants in the space. You had to do it yourself, and that was the most difficult part of the writing was much more easier than giving it some structure. So while if I don't know if you read Rumi or if you read Gibran, it's quite difficult to comprehend and decipher some of the work they've written, or some of the poems that they've written. But essentially, at the end of the day, when if it needs to be marketable, I'm also a marketer, unfortunately or fortunately. So if you need to market it, you need to probably make it a little simpler for the readers to understand. Though poetry cannot be simplified, nor should it be explained. You should leave it to the reader to sort of understand and infer their own inferences out of what a writer is trying to tell. So net, it was very, very difficult to give some structure to the book. Um, uh, it isn't in a sequence that I've written any of those poems, right? You have written it in different sequences and different time frames. Probably some of the work was done in early 2000s, and some of the work was done in the late 2000, not close to around 2018, 2019. I think the last poetry that was published in the book was of 2018 or 19. So you are trying to compile a work which has been a natural flow of thought for a period of almost about close to 20 years. So that was a quite a challenging job.
Right, right. I totally understand your point, because when you are throwing your thoughts, or when the thoughts are coming and you are scribbling your thoughts, you do not think about categorizing those. But tell me something. Which is your favorite segment when you are writing? So I have seen that you have written a lot on different topics. You have also covered political angles as well. You have also covered some historical evidences in the book. But which one is your favorite, or which one is your when you have written something and you felt that, okay, this is, wow, this is my the best work which I have done. So which one is yours favorite in this?
Oh, quite difficult to say that, but if you were to ask me, what do I really love writing about? Social issues. Okay, I love writing about social issues, and I try to bring that out in a form of a poem. Um, so the one that on farmer's death, though it is categorized under the category of death, which is towards the end of the book, it's actually talking about a social issue. If you look at in the middle section, in a section called nature, I've written about Sundarbans and nature, how the mangrove forest in the Sundarbans are depleting, how the humans are destroying nature, right? That also talks about society, and it talks about a social issue as such. In the section women, we talk about rape, and we talk about how a woman is treated in our society that also talks about a social issue. So you might have heard of I don't know how many cases
Right.
gets reported, but the last and the most heinous one being Nirbhaya. That's again a social issue. So so I love writing about social issues, and I try to bring that out and in some of the work that I've done. So you can't really categorize it into a particular section like the way you know the readers may want to read it, but it's about your intent of writing. There could be multiple ways of looking at it. You can write for commercial reasons, you can write it for yourself, or you can write it for your readers. And I am not a writer, I'm who writes for my readers. I'm still a writer who still writes for myself, and that has become a book. All right. I'm being probably I may be maybe hurting a few of the readers out there, but that's a reality. That's a reality that I'm writing for myself, right? It gives me a sense of happiness. It gives me some satisfaction of writing things, right?
That's an honest acceptance, because as a poet, I feel till the time you write for yourself, you cannot write for anybody else. So
True.
you have to first write it for yourself, and then only once oneself is convinced, then only you can convince the others.
Convince the others. Yes, you're absolutely right, Aniket. So I write for myself. So that's been the work, and there are quite a lot of them. I've written one on Princess Diana. It might take a while to decipher which is the one that I've written on Princess Diana, but there's a poem called Goddess of the Moon,
Mm-hmm.
which means Diana. So
Wow.
I've written one on Princess Diana. So I've written one on a rack picker who lives in Madiwala in Bangalore. There are a few work which actually talks about real life instances,
Right.
social issues, and stuff like that.
There is one particular poem I was just going through, when I was going through the book. I found which was related to the social issues, and also to the education policies as well. I believe it is Bhavati Bhiksham Dehi, where you have touch based upon how the ancient education process was. And when you see the current scenarios, and when you see the new education policy, so how do you relate that, or do you want to convey your thoughts around certain these changes or upcoming changes on education policy?
Upcoming changes, I haven't honestly gone through that, so I will not comment on that because it came last week, and I haven't
Yeah.
got a chance to go through what are the new changes. And I just know that it's 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4,
Yeah.
and beyond that, I have no idea about what are the new policies. But the poem Bhavati Bhiksham Dehi is all about how our education system was before 1835. And probably 1835, the Lord Macaulay um, was sent to India to study our system, and then probably understand what's the best out of that, and probably change it. So I believe that we had a beautiful Gurukul system um, before uh, before the Britishers started um, exploiting our economy in some or the other way, exploiting the gold that we had at that time, and exploiting our culture, and it divided. The true Hinduism accepts all people, all religion, and Hinduism are not fanatics. It's a way of life. Uh, if you look at today's scenario, you can see fanaticism taking over. You can see fascism taking over. You can see an ailing secularism, and at the same time there is none in the opposition who could bring up probably a new liberal party. you know uh, I am a liberal that way. I believe in liberalism. So you give freedom. As a writer, freedom of speech is very, very important. No,
Right.
your voice is very important for any writer, for that matter. So how do you bring some of those aspects into some of the work, right? So this particular poem that is in question or is in discussion right now, it talks about how our educational system was destroyed, you know, over a period of the last 200, 300 years, is what that particular poem really talks about. And what can we do to correct it? That's up for debate, and that's up for brainstorming and discussions, and there's a lot of work to do. I won't comment on the new policy because, may or may not be right, but what is more important in today's world is, see, when I was a kid, the career options given was only two: a doctor or an engineer. You did not have an idea about journalism. You did not have an idea of becoming a writer. You'd never had an idea of becoming a social worker, nor did you have an idea of becoming a filmmaker, right? I think we are blindfolding our children with very limited options, and my humble request to all the parents out there will be to keep the options open for your kids. And That's about creating a career, but more importantly, what's more important is teaching them compassion. Okay.
Of course.
If you cannot produce a compassionate adult, then our educational system is failing miserably. And I think over the last 200, 300 years, uh, we haven't succeeded in education at all. I will not vouch for our educational system. It's still not good, in my understanding.
Very, very well said, Rajesh. Because and I totally believe that we definitely need reform on how the students or how the children are grasping the thoughts. Because uh, one thing is reading out from the book and just dumping it in the exam paper so that you just appear into it and just appear for the next class. That's another one thing, and that very rightly said about the compassion part. Because if a child or if a human being does not know about compassion, then who will know? So we have to work a lot on our education
Yeah.
system. I would not say it's a total system, but at least how the things are dealing with, and definitely it needs changes. I'm hoping that the new policy might bring in some changes. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah, let me make a simple point out there, Aniket. Thanks for bringing this topic up very close to my heart. We cannot reform the current system. Okay, the reason being, um, reformation is brought in a broken system. We are trying to bring in reform on a broken system. That's not going to work. It's time for a transformation. So what we need to do is to transform, not a reform, in some or the other way, because from the literal meaning of these two words, right? Reform is always done on a system which is already in question, but transformation is actually talking about, okay, talk about a new system. Can we think about a new educational system for our children? And I think home education, there's a concept called alternate schooling. Okay, there's a concept of homeschooling. So I don't know, with the COVID around, every kid today is getting homeschooled,
Correct. Yeah.
right? Though they go to a literally a public school, but they're at home. I think this is a time. This is probably your tipping point, right? When things are going to change for the better. You're going to think of a new system where children can sit at home and study. That's one. But that isn't good for a long time, because um, what we do not have, so I'm sure you would have recruited somebody in your team, in your office, right? When somebody graduates out and then you're trying to hire a rookie in your office, you know the difference between academics and what the industry is expecting, right? There is a huge gap between the industry and the academia. Having said that, people skills or the life skills or the social skills doesn't come sitting at home. That's something that a child needs to go out and learn for himself, for herself, right? So
Right.
it's going to be interesting times ahead, Aniket.
That's very well said, Jeesh. And then I can really sense out the terms which you're using, the reform and transform, because it's not the time for reform. It's actually we have to think for transforming. And very nicely put example on how the current homeschooling which we are doing, but that's not good for long run. We have to have throw our children out and face the social avenues as well. We cannot restrict the children for lifetime to homeschooling part as well. So there are multiple avenues around, but of course we need to see which part fits best for which child's growth. So let's divert our conversation from social issues or education towards nature. So I have seen that you have written a lot on nature as well, and then one very nice poem I have read was on Sundari. So I believe it is on Tigress Sundari, and which was in Sundarban or something, if I'm not misinterpreting. But can you give? Is there any personal experience with Sundari on when you have come up with the idea, or can you give some?
To be honest, there have been a lot of sundaris in life, so we will leave that we'll leave that aside for a while. But Sundari is actually Sundarbans. Sundari is actually Sundarbans. Of course, the tigress or the tigers in Sundarbans is part of the Sundari. Okay, and Sundari is also the nature. No, it's up to the readers to interpret Sundari the way the reader wants to interpret it as. Right? See, human beings will try to make use of anything that they find. Okay, they find a leaf, they'll try to make use of it. They'll find a dog, they'll try to make use of it. They'll find a snake, they'll cut it and eat it. Right? Then that's how the entire COVID has spread, because of some of these animal instincts of human beings, right?
Right.
The flip side of human beings is, they don't know to coexist with nature. They'll cut everything down. They'll lay the roads. They'll put up concrete blocks. This is what we have been doing over the last 300 years probably. Before that, there wasn't a mass scale of urbanization, right? I'm not saying urbanization is bad, but you need to balance it out. You need to learn how to live with the ecosystem, right, with what's around you. And COVID is teaching us that lesson in the hard way, right?
Yeah, of course.
It's teaching us that lesson the hard way. So I think what has happened to Sundarbans is, the mangroves are depleting. It's the water is coming in, the tigers, the human beings are killing the tigers, so we kill them. Some of us will go and kill them, and some of us will say, okay, save the tiger campaign. Okay, so look at the kind of irony that, an ironic world that we live in. Some of us kill and some of us try to save. And why is it happening? It's happening again, coming back to the same point. Education. It's lack of education, right? Now, education doesn't mean certification. Okay, you can be a qualified engineer, you can be a qualified management professional, you can be a qualified doctor. That doesn't mean education at all. People with none of the certificates are still educated because they read, and this education comes from reading. And I think, yeah, that's the most important aspect of life. Learn as long as you live.
Yeah, and this is really nice point that we have to put education as a core of our growth. Until unless we understand what we are trying to pass on to the next generation, and what the next generation are going to take it with them for their next 30, 40, 50 years, we are not doing the right what you say that we are not no, we are not putting it in the right frame altogether. Because if I am in my 30s or 40s, if I understand it now that okay, whatever we have learned is somewhere is missing in my daily practical life, and I do not comprehend it in a way the books are were created, and whatever I have read in the books I'm not utilizing it in my daily life. So how my kids or the next generation in after 30, 40 years, they will realize the same if you do not change things now. So of course all these things are related, as you have rightly said. So now when you are talking about nature, or when you're talking about how the things are changing with the urbanization, or how, or not the planned urbanization, I would say. So do you think that there is a definitely a need to revisit on what we are on why we are running behind all these things? And second part is how we can transform it to the next generation, that how we can make the next generation understand all the needs. Of course, COVID is already teaching us, but apart from COVID, how we can learn, or how you want to convey it to the next
Is it COVID or China?
generation?
So yeah, interesting. So we'll come to that later. Let me try. Okay, let me try to help articulate on reading and how do you really comprehend. Okay, um, Swami Vivekananda's understanding of the Gita may not be the same of the Sadguru.
Taken.
Right, Sadguru might have a certain understanding of the Gita, and Swami Vivekananda had a certain understanding of the Gita, and he came up with Vedanta and stuff like that. If you read that book, it's quite very interesting. Now, uh, what's happening is, a lot of them who are in the business of teaching. Okay, now there are true teachers and there are people who are in the business of teaching. Okay, that's a business. Um, Teaching cannot be a business, first of all. Okay, and that's where this entire miscommunication of every religion, okay, whether it is the Gita or the Quran or the Bible, essentially it states the same truth. Okay, but we comprehend it differently. Okay, Hindus comprehend Gita in a certain way, and in Hinduism you might have if 500 or 5,000 different caste systems, right? Because each one of them is comprehending the understanding of that particular book in a very very different way. And Christians will comprehend Bible in a certain way, Muslims will comprehend Quran in a certain way. Now how do you bring them together? I don't think there is a way to do that. Okay, honestly, because every human brain is different, right? Aniket's brain is 100% different from an Ajish's brain, and an Ajish's brain will be 100% different from my kids. My kids will not have my brain, right? Everything is very very unique, and that's how God has created us, whoever that God is, right? Um, what we should be teaching them is compassion, as I articulated in the previous question, because at the end of the day, you need to what are we trying to achieve during the course of our life? We're trying to achieve God, right? And we look for him all over the place, but not inside you. The same God is actually inside you, right?
Correct.
We don't look for him inside. We look for him in the temples, we look for him in the mosque, we look for him in the churches, we look for him in gurudwaras, but it is in the good deed that you do. That's a fundamental Hindu philosophy which is not taught, which is not taught. And this can be comprehended, by anybody who reads Gita, for example, or anybody who reads Bible, for example. It's a fundamental philosophy that the God is within you, right? Now some of them want to believe that, some of them do not want to believe that, but at the end of the day, during the course of the 65 or 70 or 80 years that we live, everybody is trying to attain something called moksha. This is as per Hinduism, right? uh, Probably for other religions it could be, no, I haven't read or studied different religions, for example, but they may have a different way to attain God, right? But at the end of the day, everybody is trying to attain God, only the paths are different. They take different paths. I might take a Silk Board Junction, which will never get you to God, right? or or probably you may take a Hebal flyover to get to God. That's the only difference that we are talking about. But essentially every religious book teaches the same thing. What we should teach our students or our children is to become independent thinkers. Okay, somebody is teaching you something. Okay, he could teach you the right thing, he could teach you the wrong thing. We don't encourage our kids to ask questions in a classroom,
Hmm.
right? If I was studying calculus in school, I don't understand. I don't understand calculus even today. Forget about
No,
then. Okay,
I believe 90% of us don't understand.
don't understand that. Why don't we understand that? Because we have never raised that question in the classroom. Yes, our current system doesn't encourage us to ask questions. Similarly, if somebody is teaching you Gita or somebody is teaching you Bible or Quran, ask them why is a jihad important, or what does it really mean? Nobody asked that question. Or why is, you know, a Ram temple in Ayodhya important? Is that the most critical thing that we should discuss today? No. We have several unemployable people in the country. We have so many migrant laborers who are out of their jobs. We have so many white collar jobs, people, professionals, IT professionals out of their jobs. We are not talking about the economy. We are not talking about creating an equitable society or anything closer to equitable society. We are talking about a temple in Ayodhya, or we are talking about a mosque in Ayodhya, or we are talking about, for what reason? They are here to make money. They are running a business of fear. And this is not me telling. This is multiple movies portraying the same thing. You would have watched Amir Khan's PK. You must have watched oh my god of Akshay Kumar, the same man who will go and interview Modi, same. But at the end of the day, um, it's up to us to understand from what we read or what we see. No, I love movies. Okay, I watch a lot of movies, and I also love making films. Okay, but at the end of it, uh, do you watch movies for entertainment? Great, you watch movies for entertainment. But do you also watch movies to take something out of it? I think you should, right? So I don't want to be stopping my children from watching movies, because there is some learning to take away from each of the movie that comes in, because it is written by somebody, like a person like you and me, right? And that's where, what do you think about Mahabharatam and Ramayanam, two epics that we talk about highly about? Are they real? For some people, yes. But I'm a writer. For me, it's a creation of a certain man, whether it is Vyasa or Valmiki. It was a creation. If it was an imagination of a certain person to teach me something, and I can carry a lot of wisdom out of these two books, which we don't do, right? Now, how do we teach our children to take away the right thing? Encourage them to ask questions, and by encouraging them to ask questions, you are encouraging them to think. Now, trying to talk about the same subject, how did our public educational system come into existence? Okay, during the time of Industrial Revolution, or whenever the founder of GE is Thomas Alva Edison, right? General Electrics, it's Thomas Alva Edison. He invented one bulb, and then he wanted to commercialize it, right? Similarly, during the Industrial Revolution, a lot of industries were coming up. Until then, there were no public education systems. People in the West went to Jesuits to learn. People in India went to Gurukuls, or and only the kids of the Raja Maharajas were
Yeah,
entitled for a formal education in our country at that time. So only very few were skilled or learned people, right? And educated people. So when they started this industrial revolution, they wanted skilled people to manufacture a bulb or a car or whatever. Then they said, okay, you need labor to do this. Who will learn? So we need people. So, okay, put some people into a system, mass produce them, make them engineers, and bring them into my factory. I will then produce 100 bulbs, 200 bulbs, 1,000 bulbs, and then sell it in the market. That was the purpose of bringing in a public education system. It is not to help you.
right.
Who was wiser? Their
Yeah,
intention of creating an education system is not to help you. They don't want you to think. Indeed, people, whoever they are, there are a certain sect of people in the society, they don't want you to think. So when thinkers like you and me come forward, they'll shoot us.
absolutely. I think you are being very critical about certain things moving, but indeed somebody has to ask the right questions, and that is the crux of
See, Ratan Tata said, you should not be firing your people around COVID. How many others have said that? Rahul Bajaj stood up and asked a few questions, right, for which our government doesn't have an answer for. Or not this particular government, for any government for that particular matter, right? Nobody's asking the question. Nobody dare to ask a question in today's world.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I think the biggest learning would I have gotten from your message was to is to teach how to ask. It's like, and what to ask is a secondary thing, but how to ask is something which is very important. And when there are hundreds of questions comes in mind whenever we see any place, or maybe whenever you visit a new place, you will have hundreds of questions around that. But how you are framing your questions to ask someone in the who is expert in that local region, that becomes important, because then only you will get more information. If you simply say what is this place, he will tell one line statement and go away. But if you start digging it further, then you will get to know more information around it. And that is most important part, which you have really put it in a most important point, which I can say is how you are framing questions so that the informations are getting pulled out automatically. You don't have to do much effort on getting the information. So this is so now I'm very fascinated. I would want you to talk a lot for all day, but I have one more question on it. Is you have a career as a marketing expert. You are an award-winning marketer, I would say. You're also a poet, and you have written in a lot of verticals. You have your wonderful views on multiple topics, on social, political, historical topics you have used. So how do you there are multiple dots I are quite scattered in front of me. If you can help me in connecting those dots, and maybe of course for the audience who is listening to you, would definitely help understand Ajish as an author, or Ajish as a marketing expert.
Okay, so I think there is okay. Let me. This is philosophical. There is only one dot, and that's him. Okay. So and we are all part of the same dot which goes onto him, right? That's the simple answer to that. But let me try to explain that. Okay, now coming to your question on marketing and a poet, a marketeer, and how do I balance things out? I think I'm probably one of the most privileged ones to be in a marketing profession, because it gives you a certain creative space. Okay. There are a lot of other professions which may not, but creativity cannot be perceived only as a writer or an artist or anything of that sort. Even an engineer can bring in creativity out using innovation. That's what they bring up with this new digital technology and stuff like that. So they also apply the same amount of creativity. So the question is of how much of you do you use your right brain and your left brain. Okay, probably I use more of my right brain and then than my left brain, but yeah, but somebody has to balance that. And marketing is an ideal profession where you get to use both your brains. So when I put my market research hat, or whenever I do play around with a little bit of data that I have to play around with, that's when I apply my left brain. But most of the times, I'm more inclined towards my right. And uh, and having said that, I think you won't find an artist who might be a terrorist. Okay, very rare, very
Hmm.
rare, because these are set of people who are liberals. These are set of people who will appreciate different thoughts, right? I will not come in your way if you have a different opinion, right? And that's very important. But from a personal, professional perspective, there is a lot of creativity which goes into marketing. So advertising is one subject under marketing, right? The social, see, we talk about, today's generation say I'm a social media marketer, I am a digital marketer, I am a now, the kid that is born today is also a Facebook marketer, because he's on, maybe,
Influencer.
yeah, they're going to take the phone, right? So they all of them are social media marketers, right? Anybody who, you don't need to be having a title of marketer to be a marketer, no. But that is not marketing, that is a channel of marketing, that's just a medium of communication. Now the tricky thing is, how do you communicate, and what do you communicate? And to be able to do that, you need to be a thinker first. So any good marketer is a thinker first, right? We spoke about asking questions. So I keep asking questions in my profession. a lot of questions in my profession, and I keep asking a lot of questions in my life too. So the questions that I ask in my life becomes my poetry, and the questions that I ask in my professional life becomes my marketing job. So that's probably a simpler way to put it. Probably connecting the dots. Question, thinking, right? Thinking is the thought, is the one which connects both the worlds together.
So I think when you are thinking in any of the space, sometimes poetry comes out and sometimes the marketing idea comes out.
Both ways you win. That's the beauty of being in a marketing profession, because if you can't put it as a poetry, you can create an advertising campaign. Okay,
Of course, of
you
course.
can you can also do a digital film or a web film or a corporate film. You can do a lot of things with what you have inside of you. So
Right. So, Ajish, we are towards end of our hour. So, I would definitely want to ask about the next plan on any of the upcoming books you are thinking of, any set of poetries you are trying to publish, or any prose or stories or you want to publish. So, what's your thought on the next ones?
uh, not anytime soon, probably, because I told you, I'm not a deliberate writer. I write in my free space, and to be able to write, you need a lot of space, right? There are a couple of things that I'm thinking on. There is one work which is halfway through, but it isn't complete yet, so I won't talk about it. But that's fiction, pure fiction. There's another book that I'm thinking of. In I One of my favorite writers from a marketing perspective is Santosh Desai. Santosh Desai is also connected with me on LinkedIn. He wrote a great book on social commentary called Mother Pious Lady.
Okay.
And one of my earlier bosses introduced me to his book, and that's a great piece of work. Probably I'm thinking something similar in the new world, right? With a set of my cartoons that I'm doing. I'm doing a series of cartoons called Thortoons. uh, you know so some of those things I want to bring it as how our society is changing. So that's probably a marketing book, or a general psychology book, sort of a thing that I may want to classify it as. Then there is one in fiction. um, yeah, and also to ensure that you survive in your career, probably I may want to think something on digital marketing. So that's something that I've not thought about yet, but yeah, there are a few thoughts in mind. But it may not hit the market anytime soon. I want to take my time out to do it the right way.
Definitely. So I would say to the audience, if there are any marketing experts or are any marketing aspiring people listening to Ajish, I think in next 1 or 2 or 3 years, my marketing Gita might come out, and from from the experience of Ajish, and you can go through the practicality of marketing rather than claiming yourself as digital marketing expert. You should go through the lines of marketing things. So, I would want to show the book. This is what we have, Ajish's book. To all the viewers, please go through, and it is available in Amazon. It is available in other online portals, and it is available also on many of the bookstores around Bangalore and around other parts of the country. Thank you so much, Ajish, for
Let you go. Let me have you talk a bit about Chakraview.
no, I think this is for for you, Ajish. But Chakravyuh is actually it's my research on Abhimanyu's character. So when I was reading Mahabharat, I really and when before reading, I started reading Mahabharat when I have watched it on television or different other portals. I had gotten a fair idea of who Abhimanyu was, but when I was actually reading Mahabharat again by my own, I found this one character Abhimanyu, which was very least spoken about, and but he had a lot of influence on the entire story. So then I thought of putting certain my thoughts around it, that who this fellow is and how he has become so famous. but nobody actually knows about, apart from one famous story of getting entrapped in Chakravyuh only. So then when I started putting my thoughts, I read multiple books on Mahabharat available, and then and the original sources also. I when I read, and then I found that, okay, we are only well read. We are not educated about Mahabharata. So that's how the story came in, and I just collected all my thoughts, all my research, and put it in a form of a book. I basically emphasized more on the 13 days of the war which he was part of. So my book is actually divided into 13 chapters, who is each day dedicated to each chapter is dedicated to one day of the war, and it talks more about Abhimanyu's participation in the war, rather than other experts or other Marathis fighting the war. But from Abhimanyu's perspective, what he sees, what he observes, and I try to write in a first person perspective. So once you read the book, you will see that Abhimanyu himself is narrating the story in a present tense. So it's a first person narrative of Mahabharat. It's a kind of experiment I did with Mahabharat, because I have never personally came across any book which talks about Mahabharat in first person, and that too in present tense. So it was just my experiment of doing it. So far, it's good. So that's how it is.
Fantastic, Aniket. I'm going to. I think this has been long due. I'm going to order it today. My apologies for the delay, but I'm going to definitely order it today and grab and read what your thoughts are. And thank you so much for your time. For all the humility of tolerating me for the last 45.
It's a pleasure to listen to you, Ajish, and I really like the thoughts how you have conveyed, and on different topics, especially on social issues and education policy. I really have taken a couple of points of for education policy, and I will work on my how to ask questions thing.
We can take some of the discussions offline.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Ajish. I think it's time to say goodbye to the viewers.
Thank you, viewers. Thank you so much. Bye.